which species are safe, and which species are about to get cut. Jurassic World Evolution 3 will launch on October 21st with 82 species. Jurassic World Evolution 2 started with 75 species. But through 3 years worth of DLC, the game ended with a roster of 122 species. So at least 40 of those have been cut. In this video, I'm going to tell you which 27 species are confirmed to be in Jurassic World Evolution 3 at launch, and I'm gonna try to figure out which species we will have to miss, at least until they are maybe added later. The Jurassic World Evolution 3 website states that the roster of 82 species in the base game will consist of new species, community favorites, and icons of the Jurassic World franchise. I see a lot of people assuming that every franchise species is basically guaranteed to be in the game based on that, but Microceratus, Corythosaurus, and Iguanodon, for example, aren't icons of the Jurassic World franchise in my opinion. They're just on screen for a bit. So my prediction for which movie species we will see return might surprise you. I will also use my experience hosting weekly park building live streams with dinosaur polls and requests, as well as the thousands of comments on my videos to try and figure out the community favorites. And as for the new species, I am very happy that there will be new species available on day one. But it does mean even more than 40 Jurassic World Evolution 2 species have been cut. It's impossible to predict how many new species we will get, and I'll do a future video on which species I think we could see added, but for the purpose of this video, I'll reserve 15 out of 82 slots for new species. Purely based on Jurassic World Evolution 2, which launched with 15 new species that were never present in Jurassic World Evolution 1. This means a total of 55 species from Jurassic World Evolution 2 will get cut. However, it must be said, I do think it's very likely we'll get fewer new species than 15, since Jurassic World Evolution 2 had to add that many to fill out the new additions of lagoons and aviaries. Plus, a lot of work went into adding babies and sexual dimorphism already, so I personally think 10 species is more likely, but I'm going with 15, erring on the side of caution. Before I start speculating about the roster, there's 27 species that are already confirmed. Well, depending on your definition of confirmed. I'll explain. There are 19 species 100% indisputably confirmed through their appearance in the trailer, in extra footage, or on the website. These species are Allosaurus, Baryonyx, Brachiosaurus, Carnotaurus, Dilophosaurus, Gallimimus, Geosternbergia, Indominus rex, Mosasaurus, Parasaurolophus, Pteranodon, Quetzalcoatlus, Spinosaurus, Stegosaurus, Triceratops, Tyrannosaurus rex, Velociraptor, and the deluxe edition species Protoceratops, Guanlong, Concavenator, and finally Thanatos Dracon. This is 21 species already 100% confirmed. Then there are species that I personally consider confirmed as well because we've seen their statues, and there's no reason to add statues for a species not in the game because it makes no sense to add statues to a park when those animals are not in the park. We have no use for statues of animals that we can't add to our parks. We have an Ankylosaurus statue, we have a Megalodon statue in the deluxe edition scenery items. A good find from Franco192 on Reddit is the abstract Dunk statue. This silhouette is definitely a match for Dunkleosteus and not Megalodon based on the fins. And I can't show you screenshots as evidence, you're just gonna have to trust me, but there are 2 more statues that I can confirm, which are Apatosaurus and Attenborosaurus. I saw these statues in the decoration menu during the exclusive Frontier event that I attended. The images were very small, but the list appeared to be in alphabetical order, so I feel confident identifying the chunky sauropod statue that I saw as Apatosaurus, and the 4-flippered, long-necked plesiosaur statue as Attenborosaurus. There were more statues that I could see, but that I couldn't confidently identify, so I'm not listing those as confirmed, but I think I saw Albertosaurus and Metriacanthosaurus. Finally, the consensus is that this skull is Sungaripterus. This is the one species that I am less confident in, But of the Jurassic World Evolution 2 pterosaurs, Sungaripterus is the best match for this skull, and I don't think they would have used a new species here. So that makes this the list of confirmed returning species, with an asterisk behind Concavinator and Thanatos Dragon, as those are deluxe species and don't count towards the 82 base game species. So they do return at launch, you just have to pay extra. If you want to stay updated on the list of confirmed species and all other news regarding Jurassic World Evolution 3, subscribe to the channel, and welcome to 6,000 new subscribers since the announcement on Friday. I'm so happy to share the news and the hype with you all. Of the 82 slots, 25 are already taken, and with the slots I reserve for new species, I am left with 42 slots for returning Jurassic World Evolution 2 species to speculate about. Let's start with what I think are the icons of the Jurassic franchise, beyond the icons that we've already seen confirmed, that is. I think something is an icon of the franchise if it had an extended scene with impact. So the icons that I think are basically guaranteed to return are Atrociraptor, Ceratosaurus, Compsognathus, Dimorphodon, Giganotosaurus, Indoraptor, Pyroraptor, Stygimoloch, and Therizinosaurus. Fans of Camp Cretaceous and Chaos Theory will notice that I am leaving out species that have iconic appearances in those shows. The reason for that is that I think there's just a high potential for DLC content there. However, that's not to say none of the series dinosaurs make it onto my prediction list. Other highly likely franchise additions I think are Corythosaurus, Dimetrodon, Iguanodon, Lystrosaurus, Mamenchisaurus, Microceratus, Nasutoceratops, Oviraptor, Sinoceratops, and Suchomimus. Note that I mentioned earlier that Microceratus, Corythosaurus, and Iguanodon are not iconic franchise species to me. However, I do think they will be in the base game, not because they are iconic and I'm backtracking, but because Frontier is also considering community favorites, and that weighs into it. Iguanodon and Corythosaurus, I think, are community favorites. And while I secretly think people haven't really been using Microceratus much since it was finally added in the last DLC for Jurassic World Evolution 2, it became such a meme that it was missing that I don't think Frontier will repeat leaving it out. Okay, so now let's move on to what I think are the top community favorites, and I'd be shocked and disappointed if these aren't in the base game. Acrocanthosaurus, Deinachirus, Diplodocus, Homalocephale, Metriacanthosaurus, Struthiomimus, Utahraptor, and Utaranus. Utahraptor is so popular that I want to believe it is a shoo-in for launch day, but I do have to point out a factor that might overrule its popularity. The franchise raptors I think are guaranteed, that being Atrociraptor, Pyroraptor, and Velociraptor. With a starting roster of only 82 species, maybe having 4 of those be raptors, 2 of which fairly similar, is a bit much. At least that's what Frontier's reasoning might be. Let me know what you think in a comment. With those additions, we're up to 51 out of 82 species, and because I'm reserving a generous 15 slots for new species, I have only 16 slots left to fill with my predictions. There's definitely still some missing community favorites that have a high likelihood of being added, plus the list so far only includes 4 marine species, and excluding the deluxe Thanatos Dragon, only 4 flying reptiles. So these are the remaining species for my prediction and why I think these will make the cut. Albertosaurus I'm adding to the list because I think I saw its statue during the Frontier event I attended. Amargasaurus is unique as a small-sized sauropod and thus necessary in my opinion. Archelon isn't just another species to add to the Lagoon roster, it adds a unique species to the Lagoon roster, with a mechanic that I assume will return in some form. Plus it is a popular species too. Coelophysis is needed for the Triassic representation, and I hope some new species will flesh out this era more in Jurassic World Evolution 3. Crichtonsaurus I think is in because of the name, and as a small ankylosaurid, I think it's a fair addition. Dryosaurus I think is a good addition to the roster, and bonus points for being a novel species. Edmontosaurus is a classic, and I think Frontier agrees since it was the second dinosaur they ever made us incubate in Jurassic World Evolution 1. Gigantoraptor is a unique and popular species, or maybe that's my own bias peeking through. Jailopterus is an excellent species to add to the aviary because it's so different thanks to its size. Pleurodon, I think, returns for the name recognition, but I have a suspicion they might redesign it to look more like Kronosaurus, which looks more like the real Pleurodon anyway. And that way, I think they're getting the more popular name with the more popular design. Maiasaura I'm adding because it's famous as a mother, even though I'm not sure Frontier will care as much about that as we do, and they might not add it because it's definitely not popular, but I feel like I'm committing a crime by not adding it to the list. I was torn between Scorpius rex and Spinoraptor. They are both very popular hybrids, and I think it's well known which is my favorite, but I'm actually picking Scorpius rex. Even though I believe a later DLC and or free update themed after Camp Cretaceous and Chaos Theory is pretty likely, they don't need to sit on every species from the series for that purpose. I was also torn between Sinosauropteryx and Morus intrepidus. I think the 7 species that won't breed are a combination of the hybrids and tiny species, so I need either another hybrid or another tiny species to add to my list. I'm going with a tiny species, and I'm going with Sinosauropteryx because I think it's more popular. However, Morus intrepidus might prove to have an unbeatable advantage being a movie species. For the final Lagoon edition, I was torn between Shonisaurus and Ichthyosaurus. I'm going with Shonisaurus because it's more popular, but it could be Ichthyosaurus because it's more unique due to its size. Another choice I went back and forth on was a smaller Ceratopsian. I think either Pachyrhinosaurus or Styracosaurus. I'm choosing Styracosaurus and saving Pachyrhinosaurus for that Camp Cretaceous Chaos Theory DLC that I think is possible. Finally, Tapejara. I think it's the perfect final addition to the aviary species in my speculative roster. So now that I have my list of species I think they will add, if we flip it, we get a visual of the species I think will be cut. Obviously, this is all guesswork, and you are likely to look at this list and think I'm crazy to leave out some of the species that I did. The truth is, shrinking the roster by this much means that some tough cuts have to be made. However, I think Frontier made the right call, focusing their efforts on giving us better creative tools in our park builder game, rather than skip out on that so they could hunker down and finish making over 100 new baby and male models so the missing species could return. Ideally, Frontier would add the missing species in free updates alongside the DLC with brand new species, which is something I suggested as a strategy months ago, but that might be a bit too optimistic. I think a good middle ground would be put some in the paid DLCs and some in accompanying free updates. I have a video coming soon with some theories about how DLC are going to work for Jurassic World Evolution 3 and what kind of DLC we could potentially get, so subscribe if you want to get into that type of speculation. Of course, I will also bring you all the news on Jurassic World Evolution 3 so you don't miss out on anything. For now, do check out my news coverage of the Jurassic World Evolution 3 announcement if you haven't already, because a lot has been revealed about the game since Friday. I will link those videos on screen and in the description box. Thank you so much for watching, liking, subscribing, and until next time, enjoy the hype!